Tonight, African Sub-Sovereign Governments Network pushes for implementation of Free Trade Zone Agreement. President Buhari agrees condition, says it could only work if there is business, political and security integration in the continent. People's Democratic Party reacts to bribery allegations as money given to National Working Committee members is to offset their housing allowance arrears. Lagos Police vows to stop any rally at the Lekki toll gates tomorrow as the Labour Party supporters gear up for the October 1st 4 million man march for Peter Obi and his vice. The countdown to Nigeria's 62nd independence anniversary begins as two former military leaders, Generals Ibrahim Babangida and Abdulsalami Abubakar, urge Nigerians not to lose hope in Project Nigeria.
And on business news tonight, World Bank approves release of $750 million credit to speed up implementation of critical actions for improved business enabling environment across Nigerian states.
On sports news tonight, Chairman of Zamfara Football Association, Ibrahim Gusau, emerges the 36th President of the Nigerian Football Federation following today's elections in Benin City, the Edo State capital.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, flood submerges houses in 10 communities across local governments in Kogi State. Victims cry out for help, say they're overwhelmed by the rising flood waters ravaging the state.
And in international news from London, Russian President Vladimir Putin has officially annexed 4 more areas of Ukraine in a signing ceremony in the Kremlin in Moscow.
African leaders may have signed the Continental Free Trade Agreement for economic collaboration, but President Muhammadu Buhari says the treaty will not work unless there is business, political and security integration on the continent. The president was speaking today at the second African Sub-Sovereign Governments Network conference hosted by the Nigeria Governors Forum at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. President Buhari also appeals to the continent's peacekeeping mechanism, the African Standby Force, to confront security challenges on the continent.
It's the signature tune of the Guards Brigade Band, signaling the arrival of President Muhammadu Buhari at the banquet hall of the Presidential Villa. He is in company of Mr. Kehinde Fayemi at the second African Sub-Sovereign Government Network Conference. Mr. Fayemi, who is performing his last major function as governor of Ekiti State and chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum before bowing out in 2 weeks, insists that subnationals can tap into the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement has provided us with an opportunity to deepen intra-African trade by promoting a liberalized market that permits freer flow of capital, goods, services, and our people. As subnationals with a huge potential for intra-regional trade, I know that all of us here stand ready to make this dream a reality.
Mr. Benedict Orama, the president of Afrexim Bank, partners of the NGF for the event, say the bank will be spending about $40 billion in the next 5 years to ensure the success of AfCFTA.
For the foregoing, it is clear to us why we must put our hands together to ensure the success of the AfCFTA. And that's why Afrexim Bank is doing its bit to make sure that this happens. We've disbursed over $20 billion in the past 5 years to support intra-African trade. And we plan to do $40 billion in the next 5 years.
As President Muhammadu Buhari promises full support of his administration to the successful implementation of AfCFTA, he advises on issues to be addressed to ensure the agreement succeeds.
We have to understand that if this new drive towards a continental free trade area is to succeed, we must demonstrate a higher level of commitment to tackle the slow pace of physical integration due to geographic and political fragmentations. B, the face of political cooperation, and C, difficult tariff and non-tariff barriers that inhibit business integration. In this regard, in May this year, at the African Union Extraordinary Summit in Malabo, I backed the recommendation of the African Union Commission to set up a standby force on terrorism on the continent.
One of the takeaways of the event is a recommendation that for subnationals to successfully tap into AfTA, they must strengthen their export value chain, which raises another key aspect of several outstanding issues to be addressed in the country.
Are you happy?
And on to party politics. 24 hours after the nation was inundated with stories of alleged bribery scandal in the People's Democratic Party, the leadership of the party is debunking the story as it claims that the money went through due process before being paid into the accounts of some National Working Committee members. The party spokesperson, Mr. Debo Ologunagba, says the money was credited to the leaders as housing allowance and that it was duly approved and paid in line with the conditions of service and entitlement of the staff and principal officers of the PDP. 4 members of the National Working Committee of the party had returned over 120 million naira to the party coffers amidst reports that 10 billion naira realized from nomination fees paid by aspirants had been paid into their accounts without their knowledge. While the National Vice Chairman Southwest, Olasoji Adagundo, the National Vice Chairman South, Dan Obi, and National Women Leader, Professor Stella Afato, each returned 28.8 million naira. The Deputy National Chairman South, Taufik Arakbaja, returned the sum of 36 million naira. As they all said, they were surprised to receive the alert notifying them of the payment. But the PDP spokesperson insists the reports are designed to malign the PDP and distract it from the mission to rescue the nation from the misrule of the APC. Well, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, has been meeting with key members of the opposition PDP in what he describes as consultations ahead of the 2023 general elections. At about 4 p.m. this evening, he was in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, for a meeting with Governor Nyesom Wike at his private residence. The meeting, which is the third in recent times, held behind closed doors, with both men declining comments afterward. Meanwhile, earlier on yesterday, Mr. Obi was in Oyo State capital, Ibadan, to meet with Governor Seyi Makinde, where he spoke about tomorrow's Independence Day anniversary, saying Nigerians have cause to celebrate because in spite of the challenges, it has survived as a nation. And speaking on behalf of the host governor, his Benue State counterpart, Samuel Otom, who was also at the meeting, thanked Nigerians for their resilience and called for unity to recreate a country that all will be proud of.
61 years down the line, things are not well. Insecurity, the economy is down, and everything seems to be upside down. But Nigerians, as we can see them, they are quite resilient, and I commend Nigerians. And I look forward that we'll not just be praying, but we'll also work to ensure that we rescue our country back to the desire of our founding fathers. Because we have no other country other than Nigeria. But I think there is hope if we work together as a people with the same mind and determination, we shall rescue our country and make it greater.
In 62 years, you can generally say that we performed poorly, but we survived as a nation. But in terms of being proud of saying that we've achieved a lot, we can't celebrate that. But we'll celebrate because we're still a nation together and everything. But the next election will be how we start rebuilding Nigeria, everybody will be proud of.
Well, here in Lagos, the police is talking tough as it warns that it will not allow any convergence in the form of a rally at the Lekki Tollgate tomorrow, October the 1st, in line with the Federal High Court's judgment. According to the command spokesman Benjamin Hundeyin, while the police is not averse to the people's right to freedom, it will not allow anyone infringe on the fundamental rights of others. The police embarked on a show of force around the Lekki Tollgate with a detachment of heavily armed rapid response officers and policemen, armored personal carriers and patrol vans at the Lekki community in preparation to forestall any form of gathering in the area. Meanwhile, the organizers of the Lagos 4 Million Man March for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party say they are ready for their procession slated for tomorrow. At a briefing in Lagos, they gave the assurance of a well-coordinated outing and adequate security for members. The group says the march will take place at Lekki, Ikeja, and Festac areas of the state. Well, more stories now. The Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room wants political parties and their candidates to respect and uphold the provisions of the Electoral Act as they commence campaigns all over the country. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the convener of the group, Mrs. NLB, appeals to political parties and politicians occupying positions of power at the state level to allow other political parties have access to public facilities and venues for their campaigns. She's also calling on security agencies to beef up security in all the states, including the FCT, and avoid the use of brute force unless required.
There is need for the Nigerian police to remain neutral in their own provision of security during election campaigns, the period for utmost, this is very, very important at this point, that they must maintain neutrality. Equal service should be provided to all political actors, irrespective of their size of the political parties. All of us are equal. We are equal before the law, universally, and also as citizens of Nigeria. Nobody is above the law, and nobody is more equal than the other. On this note, Situation Room calls on the Commissioner of Police at the state level, and also we're calling on the IGP, and the Federal Capital Territory to provide security in their respective jurisdiction and avoid the use of brutal forces unless when it is required. And they must also observe human rights to make sure that citizens have a free and fair environment where they can exercise their rights. In such cases, action must be, in line, any brutal force must be in line with the Police Act, the Public Order Act, and other related regulations. We talk about the Electoral Act, but we must also remember that there is a penal code. There are so many other laws apart from the Electoral Act that a crime is a crime. When it is committed, people should be arrested and not just depend on saying Electoral Act is all and all of it. There are so many laws in the land.
Well, let's bring you breaking news now from the courts. The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has nullified the nomination of Governor Isiaka Oyetola and his deputy governorship candidate, Benedict Alabi, on the ground that Governor Mai Mala Buni, who submitted their names to INEC, violated the provisions of Section 183 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Section 82 sub 3 of the Electoral Act 2022. On the 7th of April, Mr. Kehinde Ogunwumiju had commenced a suit between the PDP, Governor Mai Mala Buni, and 4 others at the court, challenging the nomination and sponsorship of Governor Isiaka Oyetola and his deputy as the duly nominated candidates of the All Progressives Congress. Again, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has nullified the nomination of Governor Isiaka Oyetola and his deputy on the ground that Governor Mai Mala Buni submitted the names to INEC in violation of the nation's constitution and the Electoral Act 2022. Well, in part 2, after the break, Nigeria marks its 62nd independence. March past to hold in Eagle Square, former military leaders express optimism of a better Nigeria. That's in a moment. To join us again. You're welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our major stories. African Sub-Sovereign Governments Network pushes for implementation of Free Trade Zone Agreement. President Buhari gives conditions for enforcement. People's Democratic Party reacts to bribery allegations, says money given to National Working Committee members is to offset their housing allowance arrears. The countdown to Nigeria's 62nd independence anniversary begins as former military leaders urge Nigerians not to lose hope in Project Nigeria. And on international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin officially annexes 4 more regions of Ukraine. Well, it's now certain that the governor of Ebonyi State, David Umahi, will be running as candidate for the Ebonyi South senatorial election. But this follows the Court of Appeal's judgment today, affirming Governor Umahi as a validly elected candidate for the senatorial seat. Reacting to the judgment, the governor attributed his victory to God, saying that he is prepared to represent his people if elected, and that his desire to be in the Senate is the will of God. He commends the judiciary for their forthrightness and dependability as an impartial arbiter in human conflict, adding that the court has once again asserted its inviolate position as the hope of all seekers of justice. The lower court had earlier ruled that Mrs. Anne Agomeze, a party member, was a rightful nominee for the senatorial seat. The Bishop of the Sokoto Catholic Church Diocese, Bishop Matthew Kukah, is condemning the use of money to induce electorates during campaign and elections in Nigeria. The convener of the National Peace Committee gave the warning against vote buying during the first National Peace Accord between political parties, which held at the International Conference Center, Abuja. Given his final remarks after the presidential candidate and political party chairman had signed the peace agreement, Bishop Kukah lamented the unacceptable use of vote buying by several political actors across the country.
The National Peace Accord is the first step to ensuring an election that is devoid of rancor. The Peace Accord is the brainchild of the National Peace Committee, headed by the former military head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar. The committee is made up of eminent Nigerians, including 4 women, and businessmen, Mr. Aliko Dangote and Mr. Femi Otedola, who undertake efforts to support free, fair, and credible elections.
The first peace accord is to commit all political parties, presidential candidates, and their spokesperson to peaceful political campaigns and rallies, devoid of violence, incitement, and personal insult, but also to define by issues at the very heart of the national development and progress. The second accord, God willing, will come up shortly before the election, and it is intended to commit the candidates to accepting the outcome of the votes as long as it is adjudged to be free, fair, and credible. We hope this will take place sometimes in January next year.
Whereas INEC is making tremendous progress, we are witnessing activities by political actors that don't do justice to the process. That is the unacceptable dilemma of vote buying. Now, we are aware of the capacity of this process to undermine the entire project of democracy. Yes, Nigerians are poor. Yes, Nigerians are suffering. But none of that is a substitute. And politicians must not exploit the weaknesses of our people in the way, a manner that has made vote buying part of our culture.
Members of the international community are also on ground to witness the signing of the peace accord as they continue to watch the electoral process in Nigeria with keen interest.
As the largest democracy in Africa, Nigerian elections do matter, and not only for Nigeria. Nigeria's election will also be about the future of democracy in West Africa and the continent. This is why they are so important. We wish to reiterate our commitment and our support but also to stress our impartiality. We are not here to support any particular party or any particular candidate. We are here, at your invitation, to support the process through international expertise, independent observation, and support for key institutions. We are committed to continue supporting the consolidation of the democratic process in Nigeria with our technical support, sharing of experience and good practices, and political engagement.
The peace accord may not be legally binding on the political actors, but there are consequences for not playing by the rules.
It is essential that this unique forum be utilized to remind all political parties, citizens, and other strategic stakeholders in the electoral process of key provisions of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, in relation to conducts that could negate the spirit and intention of this peace accord.
Isaac Ude, candidate Felix Osakwe.
18 political parties penned their signatures on the peace accord, indicating their willingness to pursue a rancor-free electioneering campaign. What is left for the parties to do is match their commitment with action.
Just over an hour to the nation's 62nd independence anniversary, former military leaders Generals Ibrahim Babangida and Abdul Salami Abubakar are urging Nigerians to remain confident and optimistic that the nation will overcome its challenges and remain as an indivisible entity. Well, both former leaders were speaking at separate interactions with journalists in Minna, the Niger State capital. Now, while General Abubakar called for sincerity and genuine commitment by leaders to ensure equity and justice, General Babangida said more needs to be done by both leaders and the people to develop the country.
My honest desire is to remain a strong and united country, prosperous, and living in peace with one another. It requires both the support of the public and the law enforcement agencies. The Nigerians must support the public in fighting this insurgency. Once that is done, I want to believe the government is willing to find a solution to it. Well, the younger generation, I think you need to do more in trying to read about the country, to try to find out what happened in the past, how we came about as a country, what happened, what role various people played, and come together. Remain confident, remain focused, and maintain peace in the conduct of elections, and don't allow yourselves to be used as political pawns.
Unfortunately, people keep shouting restructure, restructure. Whom or what are you restructuring? There is always, even in your own house, people will cry of marginalization. It's a matter of how you manage the system and so on and so forth. Like I said about the Constitution, there is no Constitution that is perfect. Of course, when you look at things that you perceive to be wrong, there is always ways how to make amends. This is why we have the State Assembly. This is why we have the National Assembly. These are people we have elected to go and administer us and make laws for us. Let them look into all these issues with passion, not with selfish ideas. Let them think about Nigeria, not of my state, not of my village, and so on. I'm sure if we really have the right caliber of people thinking about the country, there is always going to be one problem or the other. So let's sit down analytically, look at the things, and try to make sure that there is equity, justice, and fairness. That's all we need in the country.
Meanwhile, as part of activities commemorating Nigeria's independence anniversary, President Muhammadu Buhari will address the nation by 7 a.m. tomorrow. Stay with Channels Television for the broadcast. Also on the big day tomorrow, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Al-Kalibaba, says the police is deploying adequate personnel to provide protection for citizens and critical national infrastructure to ensure the success of all activities lined up for the country's 62nd independence anniversary. Strategic police managers comprising the Assistant Inspectors General of Police and Commissioners of Police in all the zonal and state commands and the FCT have also been directed to ensure high visibility and confidence-boosting patrols around the venues of the celebrations, residential areas and other public places to prevent infiltration by hostile elements while ensuring a peaceful celebration. Security is to be beefed up all around the nation to prevent any untoward situation throughout the period of a celebration and beyond. When the news at 10 returns, the World Bank approves release of $750 million credit to speed up implementation of critical actions for improved business-enabling environment across Nigerian states. That's in a moment. Join us again. For more on the news at 10, let's now head over to our Abuja studio where Terry Kumi is standing by with more. Good evening, Terry. It's good to see you again.
Good evening, Kayode. It's always good to see you. Now, as floods continue to rise beyond the River Niger bank, 10 communities across local government areas of Kogi State have been submerged. The State Commissioner for Environment, Victor Mofaye, is appealing to the federal government, corporate organizations, as well as international agencies for relief materials for the flood victims in Lokoja, the state capital.
Flooding continues unabated in Kogi State, north-central Nigeria, with many homes and properties submerged by rising waters across 10 local government areas. Residents of Lokoja North Central are crying out for help, this time to the federal government, as it is now their belief that the situation is beyond the state government.
As it is, this is beyond the state government. There's no doubt about that. And even federal government, under this emergency situation, except to evacuate people from here to the hinterland, I don't think there's anything anywhere. Because as it is, it's like the thing is still coming. Between day before yesterday and today, the surge, is much more. I don't think there's anything the state can do.
The solution to this problem, if the federal government can come to our aid, is the best thing is to do bridge here. Without a bridge, there is no solution to this area. We need a bridge, overhead bridge, before this place can be take over. If not, anything they do, even they raise them, it will be in vain.
Although unprepared for the overflow of the River Niger, families are seen packing their belongings as they try to relocate to a safer place. Boat operators are now making cool business, as it seems to be the only means of transportation.
The majority of people in Lokoja live in the Ganaja area because that is the new Lokoja. A lot of people that work in town live there. Now, to move from Ganaja to town is a very difficult thing for them. They are subjected to traveling on the canoe. And some of them cannot even come to work because they are scared of the water. So economic activity is reducing gradually.
The Commissioner for Environment says, as a matter of urgency, everyone living within the coastal areas must move to the internally displaced persons camp or flood hostels provided by the government.
The government has prepared what is called IDP camps. We have prepared what is called hostels for the victims, so that because already a lot of sensitization, a lot of awareness campaign has been given to them, and at the moment they experience this, they should be able to relocate to a higher ground. And for the victims who are not being able to, that's why we are telling them to, as quickly as possible, get to these camps that we have already prepared, the hostels that were already prepared that can accommodate thousands of them.
In the meantime, the state government continues to give assurances it will do all humanly possible to ensure that they are safe.
Some company news now. MTN Nigeria Communications PLC has successfully completed its 115 billion naira Series 1 fixed-rate bond issuance. According to the Chief Executive Officer of MTN Nigeria, Carl Toriola, the transaction was 1.68 times oversubscribed and represents the company's first issuance under its new 200 billion naira bond program.
A formal signing ceremony to signal the successful completion of MTN Nigeria's 115 billion naira Series 1 dual tranche fixed-rate bond issuance. This landmark transaction represents the company's first issuance under its new 200 billion naira bond program and third bond issuance in Nigeria's debt capital markets. For the Chief Executive Officer of MTN Nigeria, by raising bonds in the domestic market, the company has been able to diversify its funding sources.
One of the critical purposes of this Series 1 bond is to finance the expansion of our network footprint, particularly in light of the 5G rollout, but also continuing our 4G rollout. The issuance of this bond has been in the context of a challenging macroeconomic backdrop with rising inflation and rising interest rates. The offer was open for just 5 days, and we set out to raise 100 billion. But the market demonstrated its depth and resilience and a strong appreciation for our creditworthiness, and we closed the offer with a total order value of 168.5 billion naira, 1.68 times oversubscribed.
The book build for the dual tranche bond issuance began on September the 15th, 2022, and closed on September the 21st, 2022, with a total value of 168.54 billion naira in bids received, a reflection of investors' continued confidence in MTN Nigeria.
It came in various tenures. So one is a 4-year tenure, the other is a 10-year tenure, and the whole idea is to match our, our finance costs over the period of time. As you know, the telecom industry is capital intensive, and there's a need to match your finance instruments with your borrowing or your finance costs.
We're all aware of the rise in interest rates, high inflation, the uncertainty in the capital markets, yet investors supported the transaction. Pension funds, asset managers, and other financial institutions. We also had some individual HNI investors that supported the transaction. I think it goes a long way in the company's investment plan. Strong capex every year. It helps diversify their funding sources.
MTN Nigeria intends to use the net proceeds of the offering to finance its network expansion, optimize working capital, and for general corporate purposes.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Coyote.
Well, thanks a lot, Terry. And moving on now, the Nigerian insurance sector may have received yet another boost as more private organizations seek increased citizens' involvement in the traditional mode of insurance in the country. But to achieve this feat, First Bank Insurance has had a chance, in fact, a change of baton, as Sanlam Insurance takes up the remaining 65% of its shares. With over 100 years of experience, Sanlam wishes to bring its wealth of experience to ensure the best tailor-made services to meet the needs of Nigerians.
Our aspiration is
business expansion and brand retention is a key factor for organizational growth and to an extent national development. As a media parley between top management of Sanlam Insurance and journalists kicks off events to celebrate the rebranding of FBN Insurance. The session is to enable journalists to understand how Sanlam acquired the remaining stake in FBN Insurance from its partner, FBN Holdings PLC, after 12 years of partnership.
Nigeria is a strategic territory for Sanlam to be fully present. You can't be a Pan-African institution and not be present in Nigeria. So we expect that with Sanlam coming on board, Nigerians will have every reason to now live more with confidence.
As the celebration of this monumental landmark accumulates in a dinner, for Sanlam, the act of rebranding serves as a platform to reorientate both staff investors, and clients of its brand promise. The organization shares its experiences and what the future holds for the trust Nigerians have had over the years, as they call for more partnerships to strengthen the insurance sector.
Sanlam has a fundamental philosophy of partnership, and to the extent that we can partner with any government department or any government entity and bring our experience and localize it to fit the Nigerian market, we would like to do so.
The reason for the merger is further explained.
Nigeria has had a lot of potential in terms of insurance. As you know, we still have such a low penetration in insurance when compared to the rest of the world, even in Africa. Sanlam, with the experience of over 100 years, with South Africa having an insurance penetration of over 15%, we believe that the entrance of Sanlam brand in Nigeria will deepen the insurance penetration in this country.
For a partnership that has lasted for over 12 years between organizations with over 100 years of experience, Nigerians will be hoping for better insurance policies and services.
Thank you.
And for one more time this week, here's Teniola Oyetayo with the latest business stories on the news at 10.
Well, thanks a lot, Kayode. Welcome to Business News. The World Bank has approved a $750 million loan to help Nigeria speed up the implementation of critical actions that will improve the business-enabling environment in states. The program, for results, supports the most critical state-level business-enabling reforms of the government's SABRE program. The program is open to all states in Nigeria and the FCT, given their ability to take concrete steps towards addressing major business enabling environment challenges. The African Export-Import Bank of Frexim has pledged $40 billion to boost inter-African trade in the next 5 years. Speaking at the second African Sub-Sovereign Governments Network conference today in Abuja, the president and chairman of the board of directors of Frexim Bank, Benedict Orama, said the multilateral finance institution has also launched the African Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme to enable goods to move across borders easily. While pledging the Frexim Bank's commitment in the coordinated efforts to boost intra-African trade, Mr. Orama mentioned that a $3 billion facility for clearing and settlement is available for a continent-wide operation of the system. Nigeria's stock market ends the final day of September and the third quarter with a moderate rebound from the recent sell-offs as investors took advantage of the low price of some high-value equities. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, last trading day of September and the bull appears with a nice close. And it's back to the 49K level there. Looking at the all-share index, up 0.12%. Now we see market cap, 26.451 trillion naira. Let's see what's happening with the activity chart there. We see it's all green across board there. We see some buying pressure in the market with the volume there, 356 million units of stocks traded, valued at 3.7 billion naira. Deals there, 3,311, all much more than we saw yesterday with volume up about 60% today. Let's look at the sectoral performance there. Banking counted there, it's up about 0.41%, and we see consumer goods up 0.57% with some buying pressure with Guinness Nigeria there that we saw. Oil and gas, it's flattish green there, up 0.03%. Let's look at the gainers counted there. RT Briscoe's topping that counter, up 9.68%, closing at 34 kobo. And we see Mayan Baker there, 4 naira, 10 kobo, closing up 9.63%. Let's look at the losers counter there now. It's the Ikeja Hotel topping that counter, closing down 9.68%. Well, the MPC is still raising rates and investors still seem quite cautious in this market. Hopefully, inflation peaks at some point and we see the bull take over. And that's the stock market reports. I'm Ladi Williams. It's back to you.
And that's Business News Tonight. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. It's back to Kayode for the rest of the news at 10.
Well, thank you, Teniola. On the foreign scene, Ukraine has responded to the Russian annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions by asking NATO to speed up giving it membership of the U.S.-led defense alliance. In his response, President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed to oust the Russians from all of Ukraine. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Russian President Vladimir Putin has officially annexed 4 more areas of Ukraine in a signing ceremony in the Kremlin in Moscow. In a speech, Mr. Putin claimed people living in there had made their choice, but the referendums have been condemned as shams. Addressing hundreds of Russian ministers and diplomats in the lavish ceremony, he echoed previous claims that the West was trying to bring Russia to its knees and make Russians slaves. Putin also referred to the US military as brutal before condemning the expansion of NATO. After the speech, the Russian-appointed leaders of the territories being seized signed the formal documents. Western countries have repeated they will never respect or acknowledge what they say is an illegal land grab.
The United States, I want to be very clear about this, the United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory. This so-called referenda was a sham, an absolute sham. The results were manufactured in Moscow. And the true will of the Ukrainian people is evident every day as they sacrifice their lives to save their people and maintain the independence of their country.
The Ukrainian regional governor in Zaporizhia says at least 25 citizens have been killed and 50 injured in a Russian strike on a civilian convoy. A huge crater next to a row of vehicles in the city testifies to the violence of the attack. Windows and windscreens were smashed in. The convoy was hit as people were preparing to travel to the Russian-occupied part of the region to pick up their relatives and also deliver humanitarian aid. Reacting to the attack in the early hours of Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia was a state terrorist. He said Russia launched 16 rockets on the city and vowed to punish perpetrators for every lost Ukrainian life. Meanwhile, a Russian-installed local official blamed Ukraine for the attack. Meanwhile, footage released by Ukraine's State Emergency Service shows an electricity substation on fire following what the service said was a shelling attack by Russia. The SES claimed 3 transformers were destroyed in the attack, with 6 fire engines and 25 personnel working to make the site safe. It is one of a number of attacks on substations in Ukraine since Russia invaded in February. The US has said it seems Russia is to blame for this week's leaks in the Nord Stream gas pipelines. Here, Danish aircraft and ships monitoring one of the gas leaks. US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said an investigation was being carried out into the cause of what she called an act of sabotage, adding it was highly unlikely that these incidents are a coincidence. No evidence about how the leaks happened has been made public. Russia has dismissed suggestions that it was to blame, saying claims that it had damaged the pipelines were stupid and absurd. China's President Xi Jinping has led senior government officials, including Premier Li Keqiang, at a Martyrs' Day ceremony in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Members of the People's Liberation Army Honor Guard marched with floral baskets in the square before laying them at the monument to the people's heroes during the ceremony. Xi and members of the Politburo walked past the floral tributes shortly after. Martyrs' Day is an annual national memorial day which began in 2014, the second year of Xi's leadership. Reports suggest a coup attempt appears to be underway in Burkina Faso after gunshots were heard near the presidential palace. Video showed soldiers on the streets of Burkina Faso's capital on Friday. Gunfire was also heard at the National Assembly, the national broadcaster, while the residence of the Prime Minister has been blocked by military vehicles. It was only in January that the current head of state, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, here seen speaking to soldiers yesterday, ousted President Roch Kabore through a coup. And finally, singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran has been told he must go to court after it was alleged that he copied his 2014 hit Thinking Out Loud from Marvin Gaye's 1973 classic Let's Get It On. U.S. District Judge Louis Stanton in Manhattan denied Sheeran's bid to dismiss the copyright infringement suit by Structured Asset Sales LLC. Stanton said a jury must decide whether the two songs are substantially similar. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Now, the chairman of Zamfara State Football Association, Ibrahim Gusau, has emerged the new president of the Nigerian Football Federation following the outcome of today's election held in Benin City, the Edo State capital. Gusau had polled 21 votes as against the 12. His opponents, Sheyi Akimomi, 6 by Shehu Dikko, and 1 each for Ida Peterside and Abayola got. But the election had to go to a rerun as he needed 1 more vote to meet up with the electoral requirement. At the rerun, his opponents, Akimomi and Dikko, pulled out of the race, leaving Gusau and Peterside competing for the top spot. This time, it was a landslide victory, with Gusau scoring 39 and Peterside scoring 1 vote, and the other vote was invalidated.
Ibrahim Musa scored a total of 39 votes, while Mr. Peterside Ida scored a total of 1 vote.
Earlier, former president of the Nigeria Football Federation, Mr. Amaju Pinnick, called on the incoming executives to place a premium on football development as they pilot the affairs of the Nigerian Football Federation over the next 4 years. Mr. Pinnick made the appeal during his valedictory speech at the 78th Annual General Assembly. The host and Deputy Governor of Edo State, Mr. Philip Shuaibu, called on the aggrieved parties to toe the line of peace and give their support to the new board. Well, it's game, set, and match as well on Sports News. It's back to Kaede with the wrap of the news at 10. I'm Victor Matthias. Happy Independence Day anniversary.
Well, thank you, Victor. And the main news again. African Sub-Sovereign Governments Network today pushed for implementation of Free Trade Zone Agreement as President Buhari gave conditions for enforcement. Also today, Lagos government, rather the police, vowed to stop any rally at the Lekki tollgate tomorrow as the Labour Party supporters gear up for the October 1st 4 million man march for Peter Obi and his vice. Well, that's been the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kaede Okikele. Good night and happy Independence Day celebrations tomorrow.